It's the On Stage podcast with Chris Robert. We have Christen Horne. She's a opera singer and a writer, and we're going to find out all about how you can mix opera singing and writing in the same sentence. You can't really do that. And she's also a gamer, which is kind of interesting because she's a singing gamer writer.
I have many hats.
And also she's a storyteller, and she the biggest value that she can bring to a conversation is helping geeks, and I'm not a geek, but I don't mind, and nerds learn more about what it means to embrace who they are to their full advantage, because she loves empowering people. Ladies and gentlemen, Christen Horne. Christen, can you it's really a great pleasure to see you here. And we're delighted and honored to meet you. For anyone watching, can you enlighten us of who you are and bring us in?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, thank you for that amazing introduction. Very honored. And I'm so happy to be here as well. So like you said, my name is Christen Horne. I am an opera singer. I studied opera for 10, 12 years. My first voice teacher was my grandmother. And at the time I wanted to sing musical theater. And she said, if you learn how to sing opera, your musical theater will get better. And so I was also struggling a lot with musical theater because I am a soprano, and a lot of modern musical theater is written for mezzo belters. And at church, I was singing in a youth band, and they had me singing tenor because they didn't want to learn how to play in different keys. That's how I felt anyway. The guitarists, they were like, okay, well, this is the key that is easy to play in for guitar. So I guess this is the key you're singing it in. And now I'm just like, that feels so backwards to me. So I was struggling. I was struggling a lot. And for a while, I thought I was a mezzo soprano. And then after a year working in my undergrad, my voice teacher was like, yeah, you're a soprano. Because after moving away from all of the bad habits, it just totally unleashes your voice in a completely new way. And so that's one part of me. Basically, I think the through line for me is I've always been a storyteller. When I was little, I wanted to be a film actor. I'm actually pursuing that now as well. I've always loved telling stories. I love reading books. I always have. I like to say that Star Wars books were my best friends growing up because I was very introverted and didn't make friends very easily. And so, yeah, I do the nerd thing. I love going to San Diego Comic-Con. I love playing video games. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell, I suppose.
That's very interesting. You should say that. When do you use the storyteller part? Tell us about that.
Oh, well, so you use storytelling when you're acting. You do use storytelling when you're teaching. I do some music teaching. I don't teach not Bible school. I don't teach Sunday school, but I do teach music, piano and singing. And you do use stories a lot to kind of help relate the concepts and help the concepts become more accessible for the students. But usually when I think about storytelling, I think about my acting. Even in an opera, I know opera singers are not really known for their acting chops. It is more about the singing, and it is. But my favorite part was always digging into the character. Who is this person? Why do they behave the way they do? Why do they react the way they do? And then with opera, what's so amazing is it's written so intentionally and so well that you can take your cues, your storytelling cues from the music, and then use the music to just build the drama and the storytelling even further. And so usually your dramatic choices they need to align with the music in a specific way. So that it just all comes together as a cohesive story. But it's always so much fun to discover those people that I'm playing. The newest venture in which I am storytelling is I'm literally writing a book, and that's what that World of Orda is about. The D&D game that I play, we started during the pandemic, so lockdown went into effect, and we were like, we got to do something. So we started a D&D game, And I just fell in love with my character. I decided to write her backstory, and I was missing acting really badly because I missed, like I said, I missed digging into the meat of characters and figuring out who they are and how can I become them. And so I started to do that for my D&D character because I was bored and I missed it. And at some point, I just started writing it all down. I use this website called Workflowy because in high school, I could not write. I was a good writer, but it was so stressful, and I hate sitting there on like the blank Word doc page. It's just the worst. So I found a website called Workflowy, and it doesn't look like that. It just looks like an outline. And so I was just typing happily away, and all of a sudden my husband looks over my shoulder and he looks at my screen and he goes, "Those look like chapter titles." And so I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I started writing a book with the guy that runs the game, our D&D game. And so we've created this world called Urda, and that's where the book is set. It's 3 books now. We have 9 already kind of slated. We've got sketches for about 9 books out so far. And we're just going to keep writing there. So that's why all of our social media is World of Urda, because no matter which story you are interested in Urda, there is gonna at a certain point, we're just gonna keep writing there, and there's gonna be something for everybody on Urda. So we invite you to come and play. And then the other thing that's super cool is that since my co-author is a DM, like he runs D&D games, he can he's developing the setting. It's called a setting for D&D. So if people want to play D&D on Urda, they can. And that's what our Patreon's for. We give that to our patrons.
So can you describe more in detail?
So there with characters. So for this first trilogy, the main character is actually okay, hold on. I'm trying to figure out how to say this the most clearly. There's the character that I'm playing in the D&D campaign. The main character of the first trilogy is actually her mom, because it started as my character's backstory. So I was like, okay, how did her parents meet? Because she's a half elf. So it's like, oh, one of them's a human, one of them's an elf. But typically in fantasy worlds, they don't get along. So I was interested in exploring that story. So I did. So the first main character is, there are similarities to me, but she's a lot more hot-headed. I do my best to not be that way. I have some tendencies, but she's very outspoken. She's rude. And she's very direct, very honest. She doesn't really care if she pisses people off. And that gets her into trouble. So we don't pull our punches there. So yeah, that's the answer for the first trilogy. For my character that I'm playing in D&D, there are more similarities to me, yes, but I'm very intentional because I've been doing character work for so long. I'm very intentional about figuring out what are the differences, because she's not just me. What are the differences, and what are the important differences? How would I react in this situation versus how would she react in this situation?
Excellent. Yeah, that's what I figured. So, well, take us back to the beginning when you decided that you wanted to be a singer.
Yeah.
Or was there anything else that you maybe thought, well, I want to be this, I want to be that, but then I thought, you know what, I think I'll try to be a singer. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So, well, my whole family is musicians. They are musicians. My grandma was an opera singer. She taught music for years and years and years. That was her career. Choir, music classes. My dad is a tenor and plays the drums. My mom is an alto, and she always led worship services at the church that I grew up in, and, directed all of the crazy, like the Christmas shows and the Easter shows and stuff like that. And so then my sister she's a mezzo belter. And my brother is a baritone, and they both went to, it's called AMDA, American Musical something, AMDA. It's in LA. They've got 2 campuses. Wow. And so we've just always been a musical family. There was not really it's just part of who I am. So I've just always been singing. My aunt was also, she directed a lot of the shows that I was in when I was, going to the small Christian school. I just did a lot of singing with her. And so I just always wanted to sing. I was always the kid that was up there doing special music at church. I always wanted the solos, that kind of thing. So for me, there was never really a question. Though there was a time when, like in terms of career choices, I was like, oh, I want to be an astronomer, or I want to be an archaeologist, or I want to be a lawyer. And then when I started high school, I had decided that I was going to do biology and I was going to do singing. I was going to do both because there's no
Oh, wow.
money. There's no
Yeah.
money in singing, quote unquote. Uh, Biology was my backup plan. And then so I followed that through to my undergrad degree, and I started as a double major, music and bio. And then I decided that it was killing me because opera is hard. There's so much practicing, not just the singing technique, but you have to learn all the languages. You have to learn how to sing them well. You have to memorize the translations and memorize all the words, and you're learning roles and you're doing auditions. And it's just so much practicing. And I did not figure out how to balance the practicing with all of the biology stuff. And so I ended up dropping the biology degree and just decided that I wasn't going to have a plan B. I was just going to be a singer. So that happened in college, I suppose, when I was just like, this is what I'm doing.
So let's go deep more into the languages you mentioned, and which is your favorite opera, and what was your very first, I guess I don't want to say song, your very first area or very first opera tune that you learned, and how long did it take you to learn that?
Goodness. The very first aria I learned, I think, was so it's from this book that all classical singers know. It's called 24 Italian art songs and arias. Very standard repertoire. And I learned, my grandma, when she found out, when I found out all the requirements, the repertoire requirements for auditioning for all of these music programs, my grandma gave me Se Florindo e Fedele.
Oh, wow.
And that was the first aria that I ever learned. I also learned a Wolf art song, and which is kind of just like a baby aria, but it's like poetry set to song. It's not part of an opera. And then I also learned some Bernstein, which apparently was this super impressive stuff. It was so funny because the song that I auditioned with was called I Hate Music. And I just opened with it every time. And I sang it very well. It's 20th century music, and it's very weird, and it's hard to do. But I guess I just kind of have a good ear for that. And I always have. So it was fun.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I was thinking, like, I always ask my guests, whether they can actually perform or know Nessun Dorma.
Nessun Dorma is a tenor aria, so I have never performed it. Jesse Norman sang it because Jesse Norman is Jesse Norman. She gets to sing whatever she wants.
Yep.
I have never sung it. I kind of always wanted to. I love that aria. I love it. And every like 5-10 years, you get just another tenor that just nails it. And so I've never sung it, but it is an aria that most people know for a reason, because Puccini somehow just knocked it out of the park 9 out of 10 of his operas.
Yeah, Tosca, Turandot's, I know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just a tenor song. I've heard, you ever heard of Amelia Willhagen? She sang it when she was 9 at Britain's Got Talent.
Okay.
And Lucy Kay sang it. So it's not just a tenor song. I mean, sopranos can sing it too.
We can, but it's a tenor aria in the opera. So the character's a guy in the setting of the story. It's a tenor aria. So like if you're raised or whatever trained in opera and classical stuff, then like sopranos just for the most part wouldn't even consider it. They're just like, wait, what? That's not mine. I'm not allowed to sing that. That's my reaction. I'm just like, oh, I guess I could sing that if I wanted to, but just when you're in the thick of it, and you're always preparing arias for auditions, and you're always trying to make sure that the arias that you're spending time on and practicing fit in your package, and aren't going to raise any eyebrows, then yeah, you don't spend a whole lot of time working on arias that like for fun. If that makes any sense. I mean, I love the arias that are in my package and they're so much fun to play with, but it's all business because.
What do you think of Fan of the Opera?
Most opera singers hate it. I adore Fan of the Opera. It was one of the first musicals that I fell in love with. And I didn't understand why classical musicians hated Fan of the Opera so much until I got to my master's in Kansas. And finally, I found a professor who was able to explain it to me. And he says it's because when people hear Fan of the Opera, they hear Puccini, but not as good, like Puccini light. And so they get mad too, because a lot of people are like, oh, Fan of the Opera, that's opera. Or I had one director tell me that it was operetta. It's like, it's not even that. It's musical theater. And you're singing in a more classical style, but it's still musical theater. And so they just, it can be frustrating and irksome. And so I get it, but I still think it's a gorgeous show. And Christine Daae is one of my dream roles. So I've never sung it, but I've sung a lot of her songs. And I would love to sing it. She's the reason. That's one of the roles why I worked so hard and was devastated when my grandma told me I was not a soprano, because I was like, that means I can't sing Christine. But then, I ended up being a soprano. So I was like, sweet.
Because I watched a lot of your videos on your YouTube channel of you singing very well.
Thank you.
And there was a time when you had the long hair as well. In that
yes.
one video there.
Yes. Yep.
And I was really enjoying it. Now, what about the constituents of the opera, putting them together, making sure that you're singing the right parts, making sure that instead of going high, you go low? Like, how do you deal with that whole belting a tune and singing that song as a soprano?
So regularly, I don't know if you saw these videos, but lately I've been working on my piano skills, and I have been playing with raising a lot of my favorite songs to a key that's comfortable for me, because so many of my favorite songs, they're just so low. They're so low. And so I've just been playing with that. I found, one of the videos on my YouTube is Hallelujah, which I adore that song. And so I was just like, I'm going to find a key that feels good to me. And I feel like where I can belt it out in my range. As so far as the technique is concerned, yeah, that's just one of the things that you practice. And so when you're putting together an opera, even as a student, they're not really talking about technique because they don't have time during rehearsal. You're there to put the staging together. You're there to put the music together. You're there to make sure you're all singing, following the conductor, singing your part at the same time as the other person, even if it's a completely different part. And so that's why it's so important to have a voice teacher and a coach that you're working with while you're learning that role, because they're the ones that are going to make sure that your technique is correct.
It's very interesting. What other instrument do you know how to play?
For me,
I know piano I saw you play, but
a little bit. Yeah. So for me, basically I just do singing and a little bit of piano. I do enough piano to support my students, and I do enough piano to support me. And like I said, I've been working on specifically learning how to transpose, just kind of in my head but just basic block chords. I am interested in getting better with piano, but right now it's just not the highest priority. But yeah, I spent so much time working on my singing that I didn't prioritize any other instruments. It was pretty much just, and you kind of have to. I had a couple friends actually who started as concert pianists, and then they moved into opera singing. But even they had to, that was a trick to balance, because opera singing specifically just takes, so much intention and so much practice that it's very difficult to do anything else while you're doing it. If you're pursuing it as a career, if you're just kind of like doing it casually, not as much. You won't learn the technique as fast, as quickly. You won't improve as quickly. But like when we were there in undergrad, it was like, that's what we were there to do. And we practiced. I probably practiced minimum an hour a day of singing, and then another hour, maybe hour and a half of practicing words, practicing languages, and listening to successful famous opera singers.
That's excellent. Can you give us a list of the languages that you've learned to sing in?
Yeah, so that was actually one of my favorite parts about opera singing is one of my favorite parts about opera singing is singing in the other languages. So I learned the three basic ones are German, French, and Italian. And so I learned those right away. But that was not enough for me. One of the first art songs that I learned in undergrad actually was in Russian. And our coach, our resident coach, was out on maternity leave, and the coach that they hired for that semester was Russian. And so she asked me, apparently my diction, because I have a really good ear. And so apparently my diction was good enough that she asked me if I was a native. And I was like, nope, I can sing this song. And that's it. So I love singing in the Slavic languages. I've sung in Russian, I've sung in Czech, and I've sung in Polish. And I've also sung in Japanese because I love that language. I've not sung in Chinese. Chinese is very hard. But I have sung in Japanese.
What song do you know in Japanese? That's very interesting.
So for my senior recital in my undergrad, I did the theme was folk songs in classical writing. There wasn't a lot of classical writing, at least in terms of the Western definition, from Japan. So I just straight up sang some folk songs. So there's a song that it actually plays like in Tokyo. It plays when their lights are green or something like that, when it's okay to walk, and it's called Torianse. I learned one called Sakura, and I learned one, it's like, the translation is something crazy. It's like the moon hanging over the castle, the full moon hanging over the castle, or something like that. So I learned three folk songs, 3 Japanese folk songs.
Yeah, that's really, like, Japanese and Chinese are very difficult.
Yeah.
You just know like the chin chin and the that's
Well,
Chinese, and Japanese is edit.
Well, there's thank you, there's arigato, and then you can say like domo arigato is thank you very much. And then you can add like an honorific or make it even more polite. Domo arigato gozaimashita, that sort of thing. So something that I love though, is that in all of the languages that I have explored, Japanese and Italian consistently sit at the top for me. And what I think is interesting is there is actually a lot of similarities in Japanese and Italian, even though they're like across the world from each other. But like something that's so important in singing in Italian or with singing in Italian is focusing on the vowel and letting just like da 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 da. You kind of let the cadence take you. Japanese is the same. It's just a slightly different cadence.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Super interesting.
Okay, now I'm reading here that you have 2 music degrees.
Yeah.
And you're a Star Wars nerd. So how do you fit the 2 together?
Star Wars and music? Well, I mean, John Williams. I'm just a huge John Williams fan. After falling in love with the Star Wars music, I went and I found the rest of his scores. And they have taught me, what's crazy is he's written a couple of songs, but his music for the most part doesn't have any words, but has taught me so much about storytelling and is a huge inspiration to, I mentioned I was writing a book. We have incorporated music into the magic of the world of Orda, at least for the elves specifically. So they're all based on sound and music, and everything is sung, and like all of their religious rituals and stuff. And it's just been so much fun to use my opera knowledge, my music degrees and stuff in that way. But like for the Star Wars, that's John Williams, and that's how that all connects. But I also, like I said, when I was little, I didn't make friends very easily. So I just read a bunch of Star Wars books, like about Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Han and Leia after Return of the Jedi. Just like I read everything I could get my hands on.
So you want to be an actress, huh? You want to get into Star Wars movie?
Yes, I do actually. That's one of my, that is my, I think that's my career goal is I want to be, there's a new character. Her name is Ahsoka Tano, and I want to be the next Ahsoka Tano, basically. Just, she has a ton of lore. She has an amazing character arc. She's very important in the universe. I want to be a Force user. I want to be an important Jedi in the Star Wars universe. Yeah, that'd be like ascending. I can die now. I'm good.
Well, why not? You love empowering people. Empower yourself. So
exactly.
Do what you want.
Yeah, that's what all these over here. These ring lights. Because so I'm submitting a bunch of, and you can see like the. Oh gosh, I'm terrible at this. The bed sheet on the wall. That's for all the self tapes. So I've been submitting a bunch of acting self tapes and stuff. So yeah, just going for it. So it's all storytelling to me. Teaching, singing, opera, singing, anything really, acting, writing a book. It's all storytelling, which is why I always come back to, I'm a storyteller. It's the easiest way to sum everything up.
Why does it say that you failed as a life coach? Was that a joke, or did you literally?
No, I actually did. So I was working as a life coach. I started as a health coach, and I shifted to life coaching. Oh gosh, when was that? So I started working real hard as a health coach in 2015, and then I shifted to life coaching maybe by 2017, 2018. And that's when I started doing a lot of research on the benefits of video gaming, believe it or not, because I was kind of tired of people, I guess, talking down to people who played a lot of video games and saying, you're wasting your life. You should be doing better things. And there's a ton of research out there now that says the games that people are playing, with one exception, are building life skills, like life successful skills. So people who play a lot of video games, those skills that they're building and learning in those video games are transferable to their real lives. But the reason I wanted to be a coach is because gamers don't buy that. They don't think that that's true. They think, oh, they're good in video games and that's it. And so that was the platform that I was working on. But it never got off the ground. I just couldn't do it. I worked, I hired, coach after coach to help me figure it out and design different programs and reached out to people. And something that I think I realized was it just wasn't meant to be for me. And so I will still shout from the rooftops that gamers have so much more going for them than they think they do. And that they can be so ridiculously successful in anything they apply themselves to. And I know that because I know how many video games they've beaten, because I know how many video games I've beaten. So I will shout that from the rooftops to the end of my days. But no, my life coaching school, my life coaching business, it never went anywhere. And so I just I sank a bunch of money into it. It just didn't work.
I'd be interested in knowing what it was called.
I was that one geek coach. Yep.
Well, we all try something that we fail at, so we try 100%. Something else until,
And I learned so much. I learned so much about marketing. I learned a ton about social media marketing. I learned a ton about doing work when you don't feel like working. So yeah, right.
That's excellent. Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that with me, saying that you failed that as a life coach.
Oh, so hard.
It's kind of interesting how you said that you wanted to be a life coach and you failed at it, but you want to be someone who empowers people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're empowering yourself. So you're your own life coach for yourself. And that seems
Yes.
to work.
Yes, 100%. But since I am also a voice teacher, I spend a lot of time on mindset with my students. And so working as a life coach and doing all of that study also helps me pass that on to my voice students and help them get around a lot of the hangups that people have with singing. So I'm also working on launching some local group classes for singing for beginners, specifically for beginners who think they can't sing. Because for my voice teaching, I like 100%, everyone can sing. Everyone can sing. There's not a person on this planet who cannot sing. And pretty much, I know everybody does that. They're like, you haven't heard me yet. But seriously, and so a lot of what gets in people's way is the mindset stuff. And so my work as a life coach helps me help my voice students that much better. So I do still get to empower people. And then also remembering how much I was empowered and inspired as a little girl reading books. And so now I'll get to empower people when my books are finished and when they're published, because I would not be here today if it weren't for the books that I grew up reading. Probably do one of those my story books. Like I get not really an autobiography, but probably like a kind of like a self-help book, like about opera singing and like how big of a part of my life it was and how it contributes to everything. I wouldn't be able to write or help create the world of Urda if it wasn't for all of the work I did as an opera singer. Like that's just all coming together in kind of a ridiculous, kind of a scary way. You're just like, wait, what? Like how? I wasn't expecting this. I thought I did all that opera singing to do the career and sing on the Met. And it's like, well, maybe it was for this book.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So, Christen, in your opinion, what is the most important personality trait, strength someone would need to be a singer-songwriter and be successful?
The most important personality trait, specifically as a creative, like a singer-songwriter?
Yeah.
That is a good question. A personality trait. Maybe determination. You just got to have that drive. But I don't even know if that's necessarily a personality trait. You can learn that. Because if you want something bad enough, you're just going to keep going. And it doesn't matter how many times you trip or fall. You're just going to keep going. I think like a question that's easier for me to answer is like practices, like best practices for creatives for being successful. And one of the books that changed my life and in a way that I didn't even really expect it to, it's called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And I worked through that course and I'm going to work through it again, especially now that I'm like writing a book. Because it's for writers, but it's for all artists, but she's a writer. And so a lot of it is geared towards writing. And I took what I could from it, but now I'm just like, oh, I should work through that again. Because everything, I do think that we have some like hard personality traits, just like, that's just me. That's just how I am. But a lot more than we realize is malleable, and we can learn. We can learn new strengths, practice skills enough to make them a strength. So far as personality traits, maybe curiosity, just openness and willing to play. And it's not a big deal if you fail. It's just information, which is a huge lesson that I learned from video games. We fail 80% of the time when we're playing video games, and we're having a blast. If you give me a business person who's failing 80% of the time and their head's not in the right place, they're about to quit. Right? In any other situation, where are you failing 80% of the time and having a really good time? Like just doing it for fun. It's not even your career. Like maybe baseball, right? Sports, but that's another game. So yeah, just openness, curiosity, willing to play, and don't make failure mean more than it is. It's just information. You're just learning.
What are your favorite video games?
I love the Final Fantasy series. Final Fantasy 9 was my very first Final Fantasy, and that will always have a very special place in my heart. And I love the Tomb Raider games. I really have a lot of fun playing that. Used to play a bunch of Destiny 2. I have not been enjoying that game as much lately, and so I haven't been playing it. But yeah, Final Fantasies are up there. Tomb Raiders, especially the new ones. I like, so this is a weirder one, but I really like the Sniper Elite games.
Really?
They're just a lot of fun. It's very measured pace, very take your time, very stealthy, take your shot at the right time. And I love that. Love it. Borderlands 2 is another huge one for me. And I usually play snipers. I usually either play snipers or somebody with a bow.
I used to be, when I was growing up, I played Nintendo with my nephew.
Yep.
And that was way before they had the 3D games that make the characters look more real. I was more into the 1, 2, 3-dimensional ones. And then when they came up with the reality virtual ones, I kind of stopped. This is getting too much.
Yeah.
Plus, you grow out of it.
Some people do, yeah.
Can you tell us why are you so passionate at what you do?
Every time I sit back and I think about what I get to do, I think, God, I love this. I love it so much. Even when it's hard, whatever challenges come at me, it feels like a challenge that I want to overcome. It's that like exciting, that almost that spark of curiosity. Like, I bet I can do this. Like there's curiosity is like, can I do this? And then it's almost immediately shifts into, I bet I can do this. I can do this. Right. And then that just becomes, and the momentum almost builds itself. So I think that is the benefit of, some people would say alignment, but I think that's like passion. It's the same word that you're using. It's the same idea. It's just, you become unstoppable. You're not going to quit. Just even if it never goes career-wise or never makes a dime, it doesn't matter. You're having so much fun and you sink your heart and soul into it and you do the work and it gets good and then it makes money.
So would you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
That's a funny question. I definitely identify as an introvert, which most people now, they meet me and they're like, you're not an introvert. I am. You put me at a party with a bunch of strangers and I am, well, actually now I'm probably talking to more people, but for the most part, it's not where I want to be. I had a coach help me kind of figure this out, where introverts recharge with like very intimate friends, so very, very close friends, or completely alone. And extroverts recharge with a crowd of people. And so crowds of people still, for the most part, are taxing for me. I don't like being there for forever. But recharging for me is like being alone with a good book or being with my very close friends. So I'm an introvert.
What does your husband think about your gaming?
Well, he plays video games too. This is his game station right here behind me. So we play a lot of video games together. One of our favorite games to play together is Stardew Valley, which is just a really easy Zen game. We have a lot of fun with that.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So what challenge in your life do you think has shaped you the most?
Oh, what challenge? You know what? I think I would point to the very first time I needed to lose weight. And this is kind of what sparked my interest in being a life coach, a life coach, yes, but a health coach, because my health coach helped me so much on my weight loss journey. That was back in like 2013, I think. I was trying so hard to lose weight. I had gained about 30 pounds. I think I was about 30 pounds overweight. And I was miserable. And I was about to quit. It was about 2 weeks in and I was about to quit. And she was like, just finish. The program was 3 weeks long. I was going to quit. And she was like, just finish it out. Just do the last week and then you can quit. And I lost 8 pounds that last week.
Mm.
And that sparked so much for me. I definitely, like, none of this would exist. I wouldn't exist if that hadn't happened. That's a huge turning point for me. So that challenge, I think, right there was that would be it for me.
Christen, what do you think is the common myths about the music industry and why others make it and others don't?
I feel like this question is so nuanced. Most people don't make it because they quit too soon. Now, I want to add a caveat there because sometimes you really should quit. Sometimes you're doing something because you think you want to. You've kind of bought somebody else's reasons, or basically you've bought someone else's reasons as your own, and you're telling yourself, these are all the reasons why I want to do this. This happened to me as when I was working as a life coach. This is part of why I quit, because I realized that I was accepting everybody else's reasons of why I should be a life coach. And I said, that sounds good. That sounds great. That's me. I'm interested in those things. And I just accepted that. And it wasn't true. So some people quit too soon. Some people should quit, not because they're not good at it. They're probably great. I was a good life coach, but it wasn't me. There was no alignment there. I can feel it in like the pit of my stomach. And when you feel that, it's really, really difficult to get yourself to work through all of the obstacles that are going to come your way. Some people are successful because they have connections. It's just plain and simple. Some people get lucky. They go viral. They stay viral, especially, in this day and age. And you can study. There's actually a great course on going viral. I hope they still offer it because it was phenomenal. They're called Jump Cut, but they teach YouTubers how to go viral on YouTube. So you can study that and you can figure that out and try to make it your own, and whatever it is you want to do. So I guess, like, trying to make sure that I answer the question, why are some people successful, some not? There's a lot going on there. I think those are probably the three-part answer. Some people quit too early. They quit at the first sign of resistance or the first stumbling block. And that's a sign to keep going, because they take it. That's what they make it mean. That stumbling block means they should quit. They shouldn't do this anymore. This was a bad idea. No. That usually means keep going. You'll learn something. Some people just shouldn't be doing it. Like, they're working super hard. They're kind of killing themselves with this grind. But they know that it's not truly what they want. They're not going to be successful either. And even if they do work to the point that they are successful, they'll be miserable because it's not what they really want. And then there's the people that get lucky. And that's not to say that some people don't, like, there are the people who do the work, they're in alignment, and they do what it takes to get successful, to be successful without killing themselves, because it's what they really want. There are definitely those people too. But they keep going. They don't make the stumbling blocks mean that they should quit. They're like, okay, what can I learn from this? And how am I going to keep going? How am I going to make this work for me?
Don't you think you should be taking your own advice? Why did you quit your life course?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And that's part of why I stayed a life coach for so long, because that's what I told myself. It was like, this is not a reason to quit. Keep going. You believe in this. You want to help these people. But I do want to help these people, the people that I was working on, like helping, or does that make any sense? My target market, if you want to put it that way. And I will help them. but it's going to be in a different way. It's going to be in a way that's more aligned for me, because that's the only way I'm actually going to make it. That's the only way I'm actually going to help them. I'm going to help them with my books. I'm going to help them with my storytelling. I'm going to help them with the movies that I'm in. I'm going to help them, I'll figure it out. But right now I'm going to start with my books and my singing, because that's what's in alignment for me. And sometimes I worry that that's not helping enough. But that's when I have to remind myself how much art means to people, how much story means to people. We've been telling stories since we could talk as a human race. Storytelling is deeply meaningful, and so that shouldn't be discounted.
When you're performing, do you get nervous, and how do you deal with that?
Yes, I have been performing. I'm 32. I have been performing for as long as I can remember. So we'll say 5. So what's that math? 27 years. So I've been performing for 27 years. I get nervous every time, but it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. I don't let it stop me. I have been performing for so long that now at this point, I just recognize, yes, I'm nervous, and I just go do the thing. And pretty much as soon as I'm on the stage, I'm not nervous anymore. As soon as I'm singing the aria, or as soon as the opera has started, as soon as I am in someone else's head, the nerves go away, because they're not worried about the people in the audience. They're thinking about one of my favorite roles. This was the first major role. It wasn't the first principal that I ever sang, but it was my first, what felt like my first real accomplishment in the opera world. And I got to sing Cinderella in French by Massenet. And I didn't remember to answer this question back when we started. My favorite opera is Cendrillon, which is Cinderella by Massenet. And I adore that opera. And some people think it's boring, and some people think it's too long, and I think they're wrong. But anyway, so as soon as Cinderella is on that stage, she's not worried about the people that are looking at her. She's worried about her dad and the relationship with her stepmom. She's worried about her stepmom and her stepsisters kind of being mean to her. She's worried about, I'm in her head. So I'm not really in mine anymore. And so I stopped being nervous. Singing in concerts is a little different. Like if you're just singing the one solo. Oh, here's probably the best answer to this question. Singing the national anthem is scary as heck every time. And I am just so scared that I'm going to forget the words. I have sung that thing so many times, and every time. So how do I get through that? I work really hard on just thinking about meaning the words. That's how I do it every time. I focus on the meaning of the words, and I sing the meaning. And then usually it's always fine. But for whatever reason, the national anthem is the hardest thing to sing. And I hold pitch just fine. Like I don't ever wander keys. People actually really like the way I sing it. And I sing it very simply. But man, those words, just every time. And when I'm done, it's just like, oh, I did it. Like there's even the one time when Renee Fleming was asked to sing the national anthem at the Super Bowl, and you could tell even she like Renee Fleming, even you could tell the difference. Like at the beginning, she was like very, very focused, and then as soon as it was done, she was like, oh, she could smile again.
What about different countries? Like what if there's national anthems for almost every country? What if they ask you to go sing to the Scottish national anthem? They say, okay, Chris, we want you over at Poland, and we want you to sing the Polish national anthem. How are you going to do that?
Oh, that's so interesting. I think, strangely enough, I think that would be easier, because then, that's just another job. Which so is singing the national anthem, but like for whatever reason, there's just so much pressure with America's national anthem. It's just like, oh. But yeah, oh gosh, I hadn't even thought about that. I would love to sing the other countries' national anthems. That would be so much fun.
Who are the most influential people in your life?
The one that comes to mind immediately One of them would be, her name is Brooke Castillo. She started a company called the Life Coach School. And so that's where I do all of my, that's where I go to get coached on all of my mental health stuff, on any frustrations that I have. Like I don't like, it's not therapy, but it is a mental health practice, right? To kind of keep your mental health in a good place and make sure that you're still moving towards your goals. And so oh my gosh, my hair, just don't touch it. She is easily one of the most influential people in my life. I guess if we're staying along the same veins of that, Tony Robbins would have to be another one, because I probably wouldn't be here if it weren't for Tony Robbins. Cause I went to, like really early on when I was working as a health coach, I went to a seminar, not one of his big seminars. It was just a little online seminar for my little team, and or the little team that I was on. And one of his coaches came and spoke to us, and that was another like huge turning point for me. So probably those two for sure. I mean, I could probably go back to John Williams too. Like he shaped so much of my life just by like me loving his music. I love it so much. And like I said, it taught me so much about storytelling. Influential people. I know I feel like most people are like, my parents are like, oh, does that make me a bad person? My parents were, of course, extremely influential. Obviously, they raised me. But like when that question gets asked, those are the people I think that come to mind.
So it'd be really interesting that we all kind of want to. So what do you think when I say that will you find yourself in a year from now, or where you find yourself 5 years from now?
Where do I see myself a year from now or 5 years? Well, a year from now, I don't know if this is too much information, but a year from now, I will hopefully be pregnant because I'm going to be starting my family. And then I will be probably still teaching, but hopefully working more with film as well. And then that's the goal, right? So the goal, which is that's what we practice visualizing. So the goal would be to be working more with film, teaching a little bit less, focusing mostly on my group classes and teaching a private lesson or a private student here or there. And then really focusing on my writing. Making sure the books will probably have the books, the first trilogy with the editor at that point. And then 5 years from now, oh, who knows? That's exciting, isn't it? 5 years from now, our second trilogy will be published easily. And 5 years from now, hopefully I'll have done a blockbuster or two. That's the goal. I think my 5-year goal, I would love to do some like legit Hollywood blockbusters. I do. It's so weird because most people, I feel like they think the attention, the celebrity attention is they're like, yeah, we'll just deal with it. It's a negative. And it's like it's one of those things that I'm like, I kind of actually like it.
That's fair.
I kind of like it. I like the attention. I'm not gonna lie. I've wanted to be, the main character, since I was a little girl. So I'm like, that's fine. I kind of want to be a celebrity. It's fine. Which is hilarious as an introvert as well.
What do you think is the meaning of life?
Oh gosh. No, yeah, I was just thinking. It's a deep question. There's so many implications to any answer. The meaning of life. I really, really enjoy what Brooke Castillo actually says a lot about the meaning of life. And she talks about progress and growth, and not just in the short term, but in the long term as well. Progress, growth, and contribution. Like contribution to like the human race, your legacy, right? And would I use those words as the answer to the meaning of life? I don't know. I don't know if I have the answer to that, but I know that those words or those concepts are involved. What's the meaning of life? Maybe it is to contribute, to live like as best you can, and contribute to the progress of the human race. Because really, like, our time here in the grand scheme of things is so short. So how do you make sure that your life was meaningful? Contribute to the progress of the human race.
Like the whole pandemic, people have lost their jobs. Even I've talked to several musicians and opera singers. I guess
Oh man, opera got hit hard. I mean, singers in general did, but opera, man, just canceled. Everything got canceled.
Yeah, and it's just been so difficult for everyone the last 2 years.
Yeah. Especially a lot of musicians. And then in California, we're also dealing with the like AB5 dumb law that they wrote. And they wrote it for Uber and Lyft. And then Uber and Lyft got exempted. And it's just screwing over all of the musicians, all of the gig musicians. Like now, I think like in order to, according to the law, if I were to get hired to sing at a wedding and they wanted me to bring a band, I would have to do all of the like paperwork or whatever to like make myself an employer, like a company, and sign these musicians up as like W-2 employees. And it's like, are you kidding me? It's ridiculous. It's terrible law. And the thing is, the pandemic hit right afterwards. So musicians are just screwed because they're not going to repeal it. We've asked them to repeal it. We're like, please, this is terrible for, like, it's killing the musician scene in California.
What social issues matter to you?
The one issue that I'm very comfortable discussing is discrimination, just in general, has always two reactions. One, it just feels completely illogical. Two, it makes me deeply angry. And so I do, most people don't know this. I grew up in a very small, not very small, small for California. I grew up as a minority because the town that I grew up in was primarily Mexican. And so I was the white girl. Like my nickname on my basketball team was Güera, which just means white girl. And I was the only like natural blonde, or one of like two natural blondes at my high school. And so I've never understood the idea of discriminating against people just based on gender or race, or that's probably the biggest social issue that I'm just like, that is so illogical to me. Like, treat them as a human being. They are a human being, respect them. And that's really kind of across the board to any issue. It's like, no, you are a human being and I will treat you with respect, period. Whether I agree with you or not. You're a human being. Full stop. And so I feel like that's how I was raised, or somebody taught me that. And I don't know who, maybe my parents. And so when I see that not happening, I'm just like, are you serious right now? It doesn't make any sense. So that's probably the biggest social issue. At least the one that I'm willing to talk about publicly.
Well, I know back in the 60s, we had the issues with the black race who were always segregated, and they had like fountains that said white only, and then they had other places that you can't sit at the same table with a white person.
We're all human. I don't like the whole making people an other and making people an outsider, it's a fear. It's grounded in fear is what it comes down to. And so that's when I do try to come back to compassion for the people who do this sort of thing, because they're afraid. They're afraid of something. And maybe I'm not the person who's going to figure that out. And maybe I'm not the person that's going to change their mind. But I do know that being angry at people who are angry and afraid just makes people more angry and afraid. And so I always try to come back to compassion and understanding, not condoning, obviously, but definitely compassion and understanding. And we hear those stories. Those are the stories that before, when I was still on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook a bunch anymore. But I remember seeing the stories of like the black gal that went and lived with literally the KKK, and she converted them away from being KKK because she was just there being a person, and she risked her life to do that, which is like insane to me. But she did that. She just went and because they had what is the right word? Now I'm stumbling over my words. Like, they've built this story in their heads about what Black people are like. And it's just like, these are not the same. They're just people. They're people. We're all people. We're all human. I've been so grateful for my exposure to fantasy books, fiction, fantasy, and sci-fi, because at a certain point, you're dealing with so many alien races that you're just like, we're a human race. It's the human race. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. You're just the human race. We're the same people. Now, and that's not to say that we shouldn't acknowledge and celebrate differences in culture. I love learning new languages. I love learning about new cultures. And so like, there's this idea that wanting everybody to assimilate and be the same. I don't think that's the answer either. Because something that's so interesting about humans is how different we all are. And that's why we can do so many amazing things, is because we're all so different and we come together in different ways and we can build more because we're different. But using it to put other people down and keep them away from, I don't know, opportunities, like to build something, why? Fear. It's all fear.
What do you fear, Christen?
I don't think a lot about that. Mostly because when I do, fear is such a strong and intense emotion that I will experience when I have to. But if I start thinking about what I fear, the emotion starts to inhabit my body, and it can take a long time for that to wear off. And it can also be very draining. So I'm not trying to dodge the question, but that's part of why the answer is not like super forthcoming, because I just don't think about it a lot. What do I fear? I mean, I fear losing my husband, my friends. Like, I'm afraid of stuff like that. Connection and like my close relationships, those are very, very important to me. So I worry all the time. Like, I'm definitely one of those people that I text my husband and I'm like, if I haven't heard back from him and he was like out on a shopping trip or something, and I'm like, something terrible has happened and he's been in a car accident and I'll never see him again. I definitely, like, I have those thoughts too, but I try not to live there. I just kind of like acknowledge them and then I move on. But that's pretty typical. I don't know if I fear anything, like, I don't know if any of my fears are like special.
What are your thoughts on veganism?
It's, some people like to eat vegan and some people don't. I definitely don't eat vegan. I understand the intention behind veganism. Actually, there's a couple of intentions behind veganism. Totally get it. It's just not for me. I don't appreciate the what is it, like the moral superiority that is sometimes associated with veganism, or that some vegans will behave as a part of. It's just like, come on, just stop it. So I get it. I get the intention behind it, but I'm just like, it's not for me. That just used to be. One of the best references I have for this is Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec. Like, if you could just go watch Parks and Rec and watch Ron Swanson, because like he gets it. Just like, no, I respect that the animal is a creature, and then I'm gonna slaughter it and I'm gonna eat it.
I really hope that you get all the scripts in the mail and that you get it part, and I see you in the.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yeah. So enjoy your evening with your husband and the new little puppy of yours.
Yes. All right.
Formally, let's say goodbye. Okay. See you, Christen. Thank you very much for joining us on the stage tonight, and I hope that you had a wonderful time. And we shall connect later.